Washington Square On Air is the audio town square for the Washington Square Review, Lansing Community College's literary journal. Writers, readers, scholars, publishing professionals, citizens of the world gather here and chat about all things writing. Hey there, this is Melissa Ford Lucken, editor for the Washington Square Review. I'm here today, though, as Professor Melissa Ford Lucken with Jarod Jeffery. Hey, Jarod.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us a little bit about how you came to Lansing Community College.
Yeah, so when I was in middle school, I started this advanced program through MSU for an accelerated math program so I could get it done in 2 years instead of 4. And so then I ended up starting something similar with English freshman year of high school. And both of those things ended up freeing up a lot of my schedule in my latter junior and senior years, so I was able to take some more classes that I was specifically interested in that were not necessarily available to me just, being right at my high school, Hazlitt High School.
Right. Let's back up just a little bit and talk about the courses that you took at Michigan State University.
Mm-hmm. So they have a department called Gifted and Talented Education, which is specifically for middle and high school students, and they have programs. The math one is called CHAMP, Cooperative Highly Accelerated Math Program, and then iShall is the English one, Intensive Studies of Humanities, Arts, Languages, and Literature. And so, essentially you just take, for CHAMP, I took Algebra 1 and 2 the first year in 8th grade, and then I took Geometry and Pre-Calc freshman year of high school. So then I ended up taking AP Calc sophomore year of high school and then Calc 2 junior year of high school. And we actually had enough people who were interested in Calc 2 at my high school, so I ended up being able to take it through my high school. Unfortunately, I didn't take it at LCC, but my teacher at Hazlitt was very good, and I did well on that AP test, so that's what mattered. But, that ended up freeing some time senior year with what otherwise would have been a math course to take certain things.
Mm-hmm. And the other program, same thing, condensed 4 years into 2.
Exactly, for high school English. And then that ended up freeing up time because I needed a foreign language credit, and I didn't necessarily have time because I was also doing band and choir, so what normally would have been elective periods, I was, and for where the Spanish or any other language would have fallen in. So by doing iShall, I ended up being able to take a different program that they piloted starting my junior year. And so even though it's normally, most of the stuff is aimed at younger, because it was a pilot program and I was still going to be a junior and had 2 years for it, I was in their program called ALL, which stands for Amo Linguam Latinam, I love Latin. And so it was an accelerated Latin course. So I was able to take that, which was, really interesting and fun and weird. And it was nothing that I had ever anticipated I would be able to do. But because I was able to take those other accelerated programs, it opened up the time and opportunity for me to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing with the math courses, I took Calc 2 junior year. The state of Michigan does have a requirement, though, that you do need to take a math course senior year of high school. Doesn't matter how many credits you have. So me having 6 math credits didn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I did end up taking, though, Statistics 215, which is just general basic statistics. And I took an accounting class for non-majors because it's a useful skill.
Mm-hmm.
But the statistics for non-majors actually ended up being really, really beneficial because, I learned a bit about statistics, which is great. It's interesting. But then also in college, I ended up minoring in mathematical statistics, which is a fancy term for calculus-based statistics. So because of the way I was able to do my education with the CHAMP and then also Stats 215 through LCC, it opened up the opportunity and set me up to minor in that at college. And, otherwise I would not necessarily have looked to statistics at college at all, or just generally, if not for the requirement, probably. But, I definitely learned a lot, and it was very interesting, and I definitely think it affects how I read a lot of different stuff with numbers.
I'm sure, yeah.
So I definitely appreciate that, especially since my major in college was so busy that for that minor, I think it was like 7 required courses, but I had 3 of them. So I was more easily able to fit in 4 other classes across, my 8 semesters rather than having to fit them all in 7 or 8 classes. Yeah.
Okay. When you first started taking these accelerated courses through high school, what was your motivation?
I was a little bored.
Okay.
In all honesty, I was a little bored. I knew that I was relatively smart. Anybody who goes through those programs is smart. Not to toot my horn, plenty of extremely intelligent people that I went through that program with me. I made wonderful friends that I'm still friends with today because of those programs. Because as fun as they are, there is also a little bit of commiseration because, they're tough. So I was mainly motivated because particularly with math, I was I was bored. And then when I looked into the math program, I found out about the English one as well. And so I approached at the time, because you applied the year before, I approached my 7th grade teacher. And he was my 7th grade English teacher. And, he was familiar with the program. He thought it was excellent. He thought I was an excellent candidate. So I applied for both, and I got in. And my school advised me, we would normally say start with one because, it can be difficult. And, at the time I was like, I could handle it. They were right. Waiting the 1 year before having to do 2 at once, especially, freshman year of high school when I had both of them lining up. It was for the better. But, yeah, I just got motivated because no matter what, even though, I know plenty of people don't love math, I do think math is interesting, and I like being able to conceptualize things in terms of numbers because numbers are, generally speaking, more rigid. One thing my statistics professor in college said at one point was that mathematicians operate under exactness, and statisticians care about whether it's close enough or not.
Okay.
So, definitely a little different than what I had, one of the reasons I love math, but I came to appreciate that as long as it's within the probable factor, it's true.
Okay.
It helped me grow a little bit more flexible in terms of my mindset, which I know my therapist was grateful for.
That's awesome. So talk a little bit about the other courses that you took at LCC during high school.
Yeah. So I took the advanced English class, and that was great. I learned how to write an essay, and that, worked very well for college because I was writing tons of them. Then the second year of iShall, our professor, she basically was like, so the first year, you learned how to write an essay, you learned about all these structures. This year, you're learning about how to break them in an artistic but, reasonable way. And I like structure, makes things straightforward for me. So it was very difficult because we had to do each term, we had a term project that we would have to do, and it basically could be anything based off of a pretty generic prompt regarding the books we read that term. And so, I hated the fact, she would give us ideas,
right?
But no matter what, she was basically like, if you turn in something to me writing, we did have to write additional essays, basically saying we had to write an essay that went with the project, being here was my approach.
Okay.
And so they both got equally graded. for quite a bit, and so it tested, like, no matter what, it was more about effort with the project itself and then being able to rationalize that effort than actually, like, strictly the quality, since there was so much freedom in terms of what you could have done. But that freedom was terrifying to me. So, but I did find that I enjoyed it quite a bit. The second semester, we ended up reading Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett, which is now my favorite play. I really love absurdism. It was funny because for that term, at the beginning of the term, our professor basically was like, all right, you know, here are all the books we're reading this semester. Pick a book that you want to make one of your term projects about, and we need to basically group up so that you can have feedback and work with other people. And so basically nobody else was interested in Waiting for Godot except one other person, and I was like very adamant. I was like, I want to do my project off Waiting for Godot. So me and the one girl went back and forth doing our projects and giving each other feedback, and I ended up essentially writing an absurdist narrative poem, you know, and it was rough because I ended up getting, you know, another friend who was in the class but not strictly assigned to it. I ended up getting, like, her feedback, and lo and behold, you know, she hates absurdism, so not the right person to get feedback from. It was not...
Yeah, absurdism is not for everyone.
Definitely not. And granted, like, I will say, you know, Dadaism, specific, like, subtype of absurdism in terms of, like, artistic movement. I don't really love Dadaist art. But, you know, Dadaist performance art is interesting. But, yeah, in terms of, like, writing and whatnot, I very much appreciate absurdism. So that was a great way to practice just a certain amount of creativity and just trying to be less rigid, particularly because I did like I said, I did really like absurdism, which does not really follow a structure. And so, like, that was the kind of creativity I really did enjoy, and so I went with that. And so then, because I, you know, had been forced to work with being a little bit of creative, I ended up deciding that I wanted to take creative writing 1 and 2 through Lansing Community College. And lo and behold, that second one is how I got to meet you.
That's right. So what do you remember from the class? You took it in 2019, so it's been a minute.
Yes, it has been a minute. What I remember the stuff that I wrote. Yeah, I remember outlining a novella, which was really interesting and really fun, and definitely learned about, you know, narrative structure for long form and short form. I had tried to write, like, longer stories before, without much success, and, you know, it was mainly difficult to just accept that because I was like, okay, but, like, a novel is the pinnacle of, you know, writing and whatnot. And my older sister had written numerous novels by that point, regardless of publication status. So I was like, the fact that I can't write a novel is insulting to me. But then, you know, I found that I had a lot of fun with writing short stories because that doesn't, you know, short stories can vary widely in length. It's really just about what is needed to tell this narrative in the most effective and interesting way possible. And so I definitely had a lot of fun exploring that and existing in that, and then figuring out what did I want to do with these stories and what did excite me about them. So I very much appreciated that. And then also it gave me, you know, more appreciation for the idea of a novella because, yeah, not every story that needs to be told needs to be a novel.
Right. It's true. Yeah, definitely some things work better as novellas. Something that's kind of interesting to me as you're talking is, in my way of thinking, a novel has more structure than a short story, you know, because the scenes are typically very structured. You have your scenes and sequels, and, you know, hero's journey or your 3-act structure or whatever. So it seems like the novel would be your thing, but you're saying that the short stories were more your thing. What do you think about that?
Yeah, with one short story in particular that I wrote, I remember very much it, in terms of word count, it was definitely a short story. And in terms of, like, just course of the narrative arc and how long it took and what, again, needed to be told to make the story make sense, it was much more reasonable for it to be in a short story or potentially a novella, because there wasn't as much that was completely necessary to be expanded upon in the form of a novel, but it still very much followed a narrative structure very similar to a novel, because, you know, I did scene breaks and whatnot, and I can't remember the exact scene breaks and how they worked, but essentially, you know, like, there was, the first scene was like in the morning, the second scene was in the afternoon, the third scene was in the evening, and these are like weeks apart or anything. And then the morning, afternoon, and evening, they were all also like specific meals. It was breakfast together, lunch together, dinner together.
So there's definitely some structure tucked in there to hold things together.
Exactly. And I didn't realize it until after I had actually done it. But then I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And so then, you know, the penultimate scene, without spoiling too much, not the penultimate, it's the ultimate, because it was the end. You know, it's essentially, it's everything coming together, because, you know, you can have a breakfast date, a lunch date, a dinner date, and then the final scene is, you know, moving in together. And so it very much tied everything together. So you very much, you know, you can do whatever you want with a short story.
That's true.
You can do structure, you can do no structure.
Yep. I think it just depends on how long the reader's going to go along with you.
I mean, if I find it interesting, they should find it interesting too.
I think that's a really good rule of thumb, right? If you're interested while you're writing it, someone else will be interested when you're reading it.
You did tell me, I remember you saying this, because a publisher or something had told you, I think, like, no one's going to want to read this.
I've definitely had people tell me that.
And then you went ahead and wrote it anyway, and then you did end up getting it published. And so you told us, write what is interesting to you, because that's what you're going to write best.
I think that's true, yeah. One of the things that you did, I think this was you, did an analysis of the use of he said and she said. Yeah, I love that project.
Yes. And talking about adverbs as well. Yes.
Dialogue tags and adverbs.
Dialogue tags, yes, because we had to read On Writing by Stephen King. We don't have to share our opinions on it, but he was very adamant that if you're using adverbs as part of your tag, your dialogue tag, then your dialogue is not well written enough. It should be clear from the dialogue. And I was very much like, that's silly. That's just, I mean, especially since, like, we're not, adverbs as words, we're not using that as much in our everyday language.
That's true.
I think the main place that you see it the most is in a lot of writing.
That's probably true.
So the idea that we're like, oh, we only use this, like 75% of the use of adverbs is in books, and we want to cut it out 100%. Why does it exist at all? And so, yeah, I picked 3 different books of like 3 different genres. One of them was a middle grade book that I remember the girl was like, she was a psychic. She was like a love psychic, you know, and whatnot. And so she did like stuff she could tell who you were gonna marry and whatnot, and read your palms and whatnot. And it was a family business, and then she could never figure out who she was supposed to be with, and blah blah blah. And it was really interesting, but like that one used it quite a bit more than, you know, maybe some of the older books. Like another one was this historical fiction called The Gentleman's Guide to why I can picture the cover. And this is upsetting because it's a very good book. It's by Mackenzie Lee, The Gentleman's Guide to Something. I'm so sorry. Vice and Virtue, The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue. And that one was, you know, a historical fiction, and she didn't use it nearly as much. But I, you know, looking at them, I guess I think some of it had to do with the target audience and, you know, age and also just the context and the topic of which they were writing. But I don't think that made any one better than the other, because I can't remember what the third book was, but no matter what, there was plenty of adverbs in all of them.
I remember that. Yeah. So after LCC, you went to Grand Valley.
Yes. Had 4 fine years.
Okay. And your major was?
Music, and my primary instrument was voice.
All right.
Not that you can tell from this, you know, conversation, but.
Okay, well, you let us know about your minor. So that's a striking difference between those two.
Part of it was definitely that I just wanted to have some kind of minor. And again, my major, the music major, was so course heavy. Trying to fit in like anything else was just really difficult. So, you know, like I said, I'm very structured. So like I was researching everything, even when I applied for schools, about like, how are my credits going to transfer? What credits do I need? How would I structure my course? And I still have the spreadsheet I made with outlining all of the different courses I need and like the different times that I could do them and all that jazz. And so I picked mathematical statistics because I was still interested and intrigued by it. And then I had, you know, plenty of basis from high school and LCC to make the move that way.
Okay. How did you pick theater as your major?
Yeah. To put it simply, I didn't get everything out of high school that I wanted in terms of performance opportunities.
Okay.
So junior year of high school, I went to my voice teacher and said, I'm going to go to college for performing. And she was like, great, let's start, you know, rehearsing and let's start preparing for college auditions. So then senior year in the fall, I auditioned for 4 schools, MSU, Western, U of M, and GVSU. And I was lucky enough to get into all of them. So I had my pick of the litter. But I did go with GVSU partially because I am also very financially motivated. And that was the best, that's where I had the best scholarships and whatnot. And, you know, I always say there are 3 things that I got out of college the most. That is a degree, amazing friends, and minimal student debt. And I'm now proud to say that minimal student debt is 0
Beautiful.
Student debt.
Nice.
So regardless of some of my experiences at GVSU in the music department, I am still, you know, I don't necessarily think I would have changed my decision because I don't think I would do well with $200,000 in student loans looming over my head the way it would have if I had gone to like maybe MSU or U of M or
that could be a
anywhere
difficult
else.
Balance working in theater and trying to pay off a large chunk of debt.
Exactly. No, because I did have, after I graduated, I did have a performance apprenticeship at a professional theater, and we were provided housing and then a $200 a week stipend, which...
So no food.
Yeah, no, you had to use the $200 a week for your food. So, you know, we made it work, but it was just, it's not exactly, you know, a living wage. When they're providing housing and you're like not in New York City, it's definitely doable, but nonetheless, if I had been trying to pay student loans at the time as well.
And that was over the summer?
Yes. So once I graduated in 2023, it started in June and I did it through October. There was like a 2-week break at the beginning of October, but then we came back for one fall seasonal show. So it was definitely an experience. Again, even in college, you know, I went to college and did music because I was like, I want performance opportunities that I'm not getting in high school. And unfortunately, similar issues persisted in college. I still, again, there were various different things that I really appreciate about college, friends. I did love a lot of my professors, and, you know, like, without going to college, I probably never would have studied stuff like music history. But since I did have some great professors in music theory and music history, which really did, you know, inspire me and to learn just in general, I was interested, and I did do a lot more learning about that stuff than I ever would have, and I'm definitely grateful, and I still think about them, and they're just, they're exceptional people. They were exceptional professors, and so I definitely appreciate, regardless of any performance opportunities I did or did not get in college, I, again, don't regret my choice. I got a lot of good things out of it.
One thing that comes up a lot from everything you've been talking about is how strategic you are. You know, and figuring out this is what I want to happen. So you didn't really go to college just like, this will be fun, I'll get some kind of experience. I'm guessing you probably had some pretty clear expectations of what you were hoping would happen.
Yes. And yeah, unfortunately, what we expect and hope don't always work out.
Right.
But I did still, I went very much in with the idea of a plan, and like, you know, just during college auditions, there are people who audition for they will audition for 30 colleges for music or musical theater programs and whatnot. And I very much was like, well, if I go out of state, I'm going to be spending so much more money than in state. And, you know,
just going to the audition has to be expensive.
And when I have, Michigan has really amazing music schools and theater schools in state. So I was like, I don't see any reason not to. So, you know, I did research other schools heavily, and, you know, that $60,000 a year really did just look absolutely terrible, especially to me, who had never made more than $14 an hour in a job. So I was like, okay, so I very much was just, I've had a goal and an expectation, and then I did meet those goals. The first goal was to get into the college and, you know, not be limited by choice because I did or did not get into any school. Because I didn't initially know, is there one I want to go to more than others? And then, you know, part of it was just waiting, if you get in, great. If you don't get in, the decision is made for you. But I did get in, so I got to make that choice for myself. And I did get to go to these schools for the auditions and see them, because I didn't do a lot of college tours in high school at all. So I did find out that, no offense to Western Michigan, I hate their campus. I hate the city of Kalamazoo.
Just the aesthetics of it?
It's ugly. I remember driving into the city for my audition, and as soon as I got in the city limits, it smelled like cigarettes. And I was like, I don't like that at all.
Yeah, well, Grand Valley's really beautiful.
Yes.
It's got the lake.
Yes, very much.
So it's hard to compete with that.
Yeah, no, and it's a nice, small, walkable campus, and, I lived right off campus junior and senior year, and so the bus stop was right outside my town home, and I just...
That's pretty great.
Yeah.
What kind of singing did you do in college?
I
Or what's your favorite kind of singing to do outside of college? How does that, however that works?
Yeah. So in college, you know, very much focused on classical and musical theater. Outside of school, like, I love musical theater, and, like, ideally that was, and, potentially eventually still is the route of, musical performance that I'd want to go in. But, I don't admittedly listen to as many musical soundtracks as most people expect and think I probably should. I remember that theater apprenticeship I did. Suddenly, I felt very out of place, mainly because they were singing songs, just while working and doing stuff and talking about musicals that I'd never seen, never listened to, never heard of. And suddenly I was like, wow, do I actually like musical theater that much? But I think the main thing that I gathered is just that I prefer to be on stage than seeing the shows. And that's not trying to be arrogant. That's just, I have more fun that way.
Okay.
And so outside of, that aspect of performing, though, I listen to a lot of different, just like, pop and indie and alternative artists. And so I don't, not doing a lot of performing these days, except for, the occasional solo at church.
Okay.
And, that's fun and nice. I do appreciate that. But other than that, I am singing in the car every single morning on my way to work.
I'm glad to hear that.
Nope, I sang all the way here from work to the studio.
Nice. You and I were talking before we started recording about the way that you approach singing for musical theater versus singing for a pop song.
Yeah, so one thing my voice teacher in college had mentioned, for my senior recital, I basically was like, here's everything I want to sing, and I just took it to her and I was like, this is what I want to do. And she's like, all right, we'll make this work. Because, there are still certain expectations because it's basically one of your final projects for your degree. But we made it work for the structure that they expected. And two of the songs I wanted to sing were like indie pop songs. And so, I'm singing them, I'm rehearsing them. And then at one point she just stops me and she was like, you're not really singing this like a pop artist. And I was like, okay, what do I need to do? And, regardless of vibrato and timbre and however you do that, one main distinction she made was that, in musical theater and opera, you are playing a character and you have to bring a certain amount of realism to that character. Opera, less so. They are more over the top, essentially. But you're still inhabiting a character and giving, you can draw on your own personal realism for it, but you are still existing within a story. Whereas pop, it's more like sung poetry. And so in that way, it is very much about the individual performer's personal experience with the song and then using the song as an opportunity to share that with the audience. So, I had to think about it differently, very much in terms of just vocal stylization, because especially since a lot of pop artists don't really use a lot of vibrato because it's very talk sing. Like, even musical theater is more like is also talk singing, particularly compared to opera.
Oh, okay.
But there's still a certain amount of essentially space in the throat and whatnot to make it this beautiful quality of sound and stuff that even like non-Americans still, when doing musical theater, often will sound American because the American accent is the natural singing accent when singing classical and with that space. Though obviously, you can have an accent whenever you want to if you try really hard. But, with pop, no matter what, because of just how much more in yourself it is, it's not to say you're not singing as beautifully, but you're singing in a different way that your accent and tone will come through. So, one of the songs I was singing, the artist was Australian, and she sounded Australian, which I mean, one, I will say this. I have a terrible time recognizing different, like, accents of English. I work at a job where I get calls all the time, and sometimes I get people from Australia, England, New Zealand, Ireland, and I cannot tell them apart to save my life.
Maybe eventually.
Maybe eventually. But yeah, it's very much just about how you approach it in terms of letting yourself be in the song and letting the song be a part of yourself, and just letting that influence, because when you're reading poetry, when you're speaking poetry, you're not necessarily going for this huge performance. It's a performance, but it's not the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a character.
Mm-hmm. It's meant to be more, and you yourself are part of the expression of the song.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, you mentioned your day job.
Yes, I work for a company called Jackson National Life Insurance. I work in the call center, so I'm a customer support representative, and I got that when my apprenticeship ended in October of 2023. I was unemployed for quite a while, not for lack of trying, let it be known.
Mm-hmm.
But I was living in my parents' basement, just spending most of my time applying. I got a temp job scoring sixth grade writing papers for the states of Indiana and Nevada, so that was interesting, but that lasted 4.5 weeks. And then after, I ended up being told by someone from my church to, they work at Jackson, and they were like, oh, well, they're always hiring at Jackson. Try something there. And so I saw that, and I was like, I think I have good enough customer, people skills to be able to do this job. So I applied. It was the quickest turnaround time of anything, because I'd only gotten 2 interviews before that of the 40, 50 and more jobs I applied to.
That was a rough time to be looking for jobs.
Yeah, it was definitely not great. So it was the fastest turnaround time, which definitely made me hopeful that they wanted me. And then, the interview happened, and it was like a Wednesday, and they said, you'll probably hear back Monday, but maybe as fast as Friday. And then I did hear back Friday, and I was very grateful. I was not able to start for another month and a half from that point, which I was not as thrilled by, mainly because I was running out of disposable income at that point that I had saved from my previous temp jobs and whatnot. So nonetheless, I started there, and it's definitely very different from a lot of the stuff I've done. Like, my math skills definitely come into play because I don't deal with the life insurance. We don't sell life insurance anymore, but we still have those policies. I don't deal with that. I never want to deal with that. Fingers crossed.
Okay.
But I deal with annuities, which are essentially a type of supplemental retirement income vessel. And so I primarily deal with variable annuities, which are annuities invested in the market. And so, there are all different kinds of add-on benefits and stuff and bells and whistles that get added onto these policies, which involve different kinds of math all the time. So I definitely appreciate still having my math skills and all that jazz, but I spend, every single day talking to tons of strangers, basically constantly. Right now it's tax season, so it's our busiest time of the year, and so we are very busy. Thankfully, the last couple of days, again, fingers crossed, I've had little pauses between the calls.
Okay.
But because they get auto-routed to us, it's an inbound call center, and so I've had little breaks, but, at the very beginning of the year, it was just back to back to
One
back
call
to
after
back.
the other.
And thankfully, we're not measured by the number of calls we take. We're measured essentially on how much time we have to spend in what's called after call. where we're working on or like submitting our notes and saving details so that we don't, because the less time you spend doing that is the quicker you can get to another caller.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously they still emphasize quality and efficiency over just quickness, but thankfully we're not being measured on the number of calls we take, because that would not work, because there have been days where I only got 3 calls because it was just slow. It was a Friday, and it was right before a holiday weekend.
All right, that makes sense. All right, I got one last question. Do people at work know you can sing?
Some of them. It depends on if they were. There's this organization, I don't remember what it stands for, but it's called SQM. They measure like essentially effectiveness and quality and satisfaction for different call centers across North America and whatnot, and we have been one of the top 3 for like many years, including last year. And so we had a celebration in July for that. And so at the SQM celebration, we had the dueling pianists.
Okay.
So 2 pianists came, and they basically just were like, put a song on a piece of paper, put it in the jar, we'll pull it, and then we will play it and sing it together, assumedly songs that they hopefully should know. I put in Pink Pony Club by Chappell Roan. He pulled it first, and then he said, I'm not going to start with Pink Pony Club. I will come back to this. So he played it second, and then I sang along with like half of it. So all of my coworkers who were there should know, and I can't say it was my perfect ultimate performance, but nonetheless, I had a good time, and I think they know I could sing.
Okay.
And I definitely, not because I like to brag, but I definitely have mentioned that I studied music in college.
Good, so they know there's another side to you.
Yes, no, I think my personality comes across very clearly to both callers and and my coworkers.
That's awesome. I'm glad about that. Well, thanks a lot for coming out and talking to me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Awesome. Thanks for stopping by the Audio Town Square of the Washington Square Review. Until next time, this has been the Washington Square On Air from Lansing Community College. To find out more about our writers community and literary journal, visit lcc.edu/WSR. Writing is messy, but do it anyway.